Hello folks, welcome back to the Edupedia world, and I am Abhinay Gupta, and we are continuing the topic, the standards on auditing. Right, so we are taking a little more time on this first essay because over here you are getting into the pattern of studying and the pattern of learning. Right, so I'm only trying to give you some time and let it seep into your mind. As we have moved ahead with one or two essays, it will become easier for you to understand and hence easier for me to explain it in one shot and move ahead. So unless and until we come to that parallels where you are able to understand what I say, right, where you are able to connect with me and grasp every word that I say, till that point we will be moving a little slower. But when you are used to my words, when you are used to my expressions, when you're used to my explanation, right, that is the moment when we will catch up speed. Right, so let us make a genuine effort towards that, and with that we'll again continue with the essay that we were doing, which is essay 200, the overall objective of an independent auditor and conduct of an audit in accordance with standards on auditing. Right, so in this essay we have already seen the objectives and the requirement material. So do you people remember the objectives that we have done? Are you preparing the hand notes? Are you revising it after the class? So basically, what is the objective of an independent auditor? So I'm not asking you the definition, but the points that he wants to provide a reasonable assurance that the financial statement that he is auditing, right, that is free from material misstatements which may arise due to fraud or error. And why does he want to give a reasonable assurance? Why does he want to get a reasonable assurance? Reasonable is high but not absolute, right? That is because he wants to deliver an opinion on the financial statement. And this opinion is actually the crux. Right? His opinion, he has to give an opinion whether or not that financial statement which he is dealing with, right, is in all material respect in accordance with the applicable FRS. May it be the standards, may it be the Schedule 3, may it be any law, regulation, anything. It should be the applicable FRS. Right, and then he has to forward a report on the financial statement. That is his basic objective. Right, we have already invested a lot of time on that, and I hope you remember. Then we had the requirement, and you can count it on your fingers that yes, we had 5 different requirements. So the first one of it was the ethical requirement relating to the audit of the financial statement. So when we talk about ethics, we had 5 specific points to mention. That is IOPCP. And one additional, which is after you write all this, you write it includes independence always. So what are these 5 ethical requirements? IOPCP, integrity. O, objectivity. P, professional competence and due care. IOPCP, C is confidentiality, and again last P is the professional behavior. This is the only ethical requirement, only ethics that is required out of an auditor. Right? If you are an auditor, these ethics should be embedded in you. Right? Then we had professional skepticism. You remember what professional skepticism was? We had a similar term, that is professional judgment, and there is a basic difference between the two. So the professional difference is having an attitude of questioning mind always. Whenever you get an evidence, whenever you want to get into a procedure, whenever there is an explanation given by the management, where there is contradictory evidence, every time. Right? You can doubt on the reliability of the document, right? The conditions that may lead to the existence of possible fraud, all these things. Like every time you have to think, why is it so? Who does it? Why not this way? Why not that way? That is a questioning mind. You have to be alert, right? That is professional skepticism, right? And on the other hand, professional judgment is something that is expected out of you, right? That has been inculcated in you via the trainings, via the knowledge you have, via the experience you have. Institute gives you training, right? You get the experience on the client and the knowledge from the books. So when you have these 3 things, right? So it is expected out of you that you deliver a professional behavior, a professional judgment, specifically professional judgment, applying these 3 things that you have been taught. And professional judgment should be applied everywhere. From the start of an audit, from acceptance of a client to the issuance of the report and discharge of your attest function. So in the beginning you apply professional judgment to judge whether or not the client is acceptable. That means whether or not should you continue with the client, should you accept the client, right? Till the middle, when you are applying your procedures, what procedure to apply, when to apply, to what extent to apply, and at the end, what is the opinion to be given. If we need to, should we qualify, what is it that we should write in the qualification paragraph, or should we just emphasize on the matter paragraph, or should we give an adverse report, a disclaimer report, right? That is something you need to decide at the end. Over there also you apply professional judgment. So understand there is a difference between professional judgment and professional skepticism, right? Then after these three you have sufficient and appropriate audit evidence, and these are inversely proportional: sufficiency and appropriateness. Sufficiency is the quantum, appropriateness is the quality, right? So we have taken a very good example on this about the sampling. If you remember, I'm not taking it again. If you don't remember, refer to your hand notes, and if you have missed out, please go back to the previous lecture, listen to it again and prepare your hand notes, right? Then after your sufficient and appropriate audit evidence, there is only one thing remaining, that is compliance with the relevant essay. Compliance with essay. So when you're talking about the compliance with essay, you again have four parts. That you comply with the relevant essay. Second, you comply with the relevant requirement of each essay. Then you should comply with the objectives stated in the individual essay, because when you meet the individual objectives, you ultimately meet the final objective, the final destination, right? And at last, the failure to achieve the objective of the essay. So if the essay says something and you're not able to achieve it, you need to qualify your report accordingly, right? So these were basically the objectives and the requirements. Now today we move ahead with the application material. So the application and the other explanatory material. Again, over here you will have this section divided into four parts. One is the scope of audit, then the preparation of the financial statement, risk of material misstatement, and the inherent limitation of audit. So what do you understand by the scope of audit? What is your scope? How do you know what is your scope? To know your scope, you will first refer to the letter of engagement. You will refer to the requirements of the law, the pronouncements of the ICAI. These are basically the three sources where you get to understand what your requirements are, right? Where you get to understand what your scope is about the particular audit, right? So you remember what is the only assurance that you need to give? That the financial statement is prepared as per the applicable FRF, Financial Reporting Framework, which means that you do not assure the future viability of the project, of the company. You do not ensure the efficiency and effectiveness of the performance of the manager, the management, right? But yeah, sometimes law may require you to give an additional opinion, right? Maybe on the effectiveness of internal control or on the management's report that they have provided. You should go through this report and scrutinize and give your opinion on the same. That can be demanded by law at times, right? So this is your scope. So whenever you're performing an audit, right, you have to understand what is your foundation, and you have to understand where all you have to reach. So the law says effectiveness of internal control, disclose. So you'll have to check the effectiveness of internal control as well. They say check and disclose and give your opinion on the management report. So you'll have to go through the management report. So that is your scope. That is extending your scope, extended by the law, extended by regulations, extended by pronouncements of ICAI. Right? It is not extended by LOE. LOE is the basic content, right? So that is when we talk about the scope of audit. I hope it is clear with you. What is the scope? So basically when you talk about the scope is within what parameters are you supposed to do your audit, right? And if you want to extend, what are the parameters to which you will extend? That is the scope of audit, right? Moving ahead, we have the preparation of the financial statement. Now what do you mean by preparation of the financial statement? That means compiling the accounts, compiling the financials, preparing the balance sheet, the P&L, the cash flow statement, notes to accounts, statement of change in equity if applicable. So all these things, these are known as the preparation of financial statement, the overall financial statement. Now who is supposed to prepare a financial statement? Management or the auditor? The management, right? But at some point of time, a chartered accountant may be required, but never an auditor. Now, sir, you say chartered accountant is required and chartered accountant is the auditor. Yes, chartered accountant, all auditors are chartered accountant, but all chartered accountants are not auditors. So, if Mr. X is appointed as an auditor of a company, then Mr. Y can be approached to compile their accounts. Mr. Y is not the auditor for that company. He is just a chartered accountant, and he can also extend his service for preparation of the account, for compilation of the accounts. Right? So basically the management has two responsibilities. One is the preparation of the financial statement, and remember that has to be prepared in accordance with the applicable FRF. And other, to design and implement the internal control, right, and also to maintain it. So there are three words: design, implement and maintain the internal control, DIM, right? And this can be further broken. The first responsibility is to decide at least what FRF you want to use, then use that FRF for preparation of financial statement, and then design, implement and maintain the internal control, right? And what are the other responsibilities? When the auditor comes, right, they will have to provide him with full access to all the data, to all the personnel, to all the additional information. That is the management's responsibility, right? So when we are talking about the preparation of the financial statement in this essay, we are not referring to that chartered accountant who is entering the compilation engagement, right? Because for that we have a different engagement standard, which is the Standard on Related Services, SRS 4410. So if you're talking about the compilation by a chartered accountant, an external chartered accountant, you will refer to that essay. So when you're talking about the preparation of financial statement in essay 200, we are only referring to the responsibility of the management for preparing it, right? And so when the management is preparing the financial statement, it is also required that the management undertakes necessary estimates, right? And also the basis of how are they taking those estimates, right? And also deciding the accounting policies that they will use. They can make a reference, right? They can take advice, legal advice, expert advice and everything, but ultimately it is their own responsibility to apply it. And then it is the responsibility of the auditor to check whether or not it has been applied appropriately as per the applicable FRF. That is the responsibility of the auditor. But on the first place, it has to be prepared. Who will prepare it? The company will prepare it. Who among the company? The management. It is very simple like that, right? Next application or explanatory material that we have to deal with is the risk of material misstatement, ROMM. ROMM is an abbreviation that you can use in your examination as well. It is actually the abbreviation that is very widely used among the big fours, and it is acceptable overall. So if you don't have time to write risk of material misstatement, like if you are writing the last answer and the bell is just about to ring, you can write ROMM in those situations only. Right? Because otherwise, if you have time, it's better that you write risk of material misstatement. Okay? So what is the risk of material misstatement? So this topic of risk of material misstatement will be better covered in essay 315. Right? When you are assessing the risk of material misstatement in that essay. So when we are dealing with essay 315, we will deal with this topic in wide detail. Right? But so far, when we are talking about the risk of material misstatement in your essay 200, right, then you need to understand that yes, first of all, these are misstatements and they are material. Material means they will impact the decision of the users of the report. Now what is the risk? The risk can be at two levels. One is the overall financial statement level, right, and the other is at the assertion level. So you can have the risk at both the levels. So when we are talking about the financial statement level, you understand that yes, we are talking about the overall financial statement when it is prepared. But when we are talking about the risk of material misstatement at assertion level, it is a level, right? When your financial statements are being prepared, there are various levels where you get the data, where you get the confirmation from the management, where you compile them, where you prepare the statement, right? So there are various levels. So assertion level is a level whereby you get an assertion from the management that yes, this statement is true. But that is not a convincing evidence. If management gives you, for example, if management gives you a detail about the valuation of inventory and it asserts that yes, we have valued the inventory and what we have shown as a figure in the balance sheet, that is true, or the figure that we are giving you is true because we have already checked the inventory and we are ascertaining it. So when the management actually ascertains certain fact, right, we call it at the assertion level, that this is still the level where the management is ascertaining. We have not checked it, right? So you have to understand the meaning. Basically, many students, they think, right, that assertion level is a level, maybe at the level of journal entry, maybe at the level of preparing ledger. No, assertion level is that level where the management is giving you the data and ascertaining that yes, they are true, and beyond that you start your checking. So you can have the risk at the assertion level when the management is ascertaining it, and at the financial statement level, both, right? So basically, why do you determine the risk at the assertion level? Is because that will help you to determine the nature, time and extent that you will apply, of the nature, time and extent of the procedures that you will apply, right? Now, one more thing. While you were studying for your IPCC few years back, right, there you must have heard that there are three categories of risk: inherent risk, control risk and detection risk. So what is inherent risk? Inherent risk is the risk of going wrong or of giving a wrong opinion due to the absence of internal control. Control risk, it is the risk of giving a wrong opinion as the internal control is present but is not effective. And finally, the detection risk, it is the risk of giving a wrong opinion due to the test checking. That is the limitation, right? You're not able to detect things because you did not check it. You were checking on test checking basis, and so you picked up a different sample and you could not conclude it. This sample did not appear in your, this item did not appear in your sample size or your samples, so you didn't check it. That is the detection risk, that you can fail to do that. You must skip that, right? Now, you will not talk about these three risks now in CA final. So whenever you have to talk, you will talk about two kinds of risk. One is the ROMM and other is the detection risk. Because the ROMM is actually the word given to the cumulative risk, that is the inherent risk and the control risk compiled together. Right? So now do you understand the basics behind what is the risk of material misstatement? It is the risk which is inherent, that means where there is no internal control, or even if you have an internal control, it is not effective. That is the ROMM. Right? I hope it is clear with you. Now we move on to the last part, that is inherent limitation of audit. We'll take you to the next slide where you understand this. So ROMM is ROMM, inherent risk plus control risk, and then we have the detection risk. Now we talk about the inherent limitation of audit. So what are the inherent limitations of audit? Actually, this is one thing that always protects you, you know, because if there is a litigation or if there is a suit filed that the company is not actually a going concern company, or if there is something goes wrong, the company gets wound up and people have made investment in that company depending upon your report, that yes, you have given a very good report about this company, we invested in it and it went down. Why did it wind up? Why did it dissolve? Right? There you can say that we have inherent limitations in audit. So I am not held responsible. That is a limitation. We cannot go beyond that. That is what we checked. And as our working is up to date, we have done all the procedures. This is the proof that we have done all the procedures. And as per the procedure, this is the conclusion we made. And it is a valid conclusion. Now if something goes wrong, we are not responsible for that. We have seen they have prepared it as per the applicable FRF. Now if something else goes wrong, which is beyond our purview, beyond our scope, we are not responsible for that. You're getting my point? That is the inherent limitation of audit. So to be very specific, you have it divided into three categories. One is the nature of financial reporting. That gives you, that puts on a limitation. Second, the nature of the audit processes that we follow, procedures that we follow. And third, the timeliness of financial reporting and the balance between the benefit and cost. Now what do we mean with that? By that? So the nature of financial reporting. Now what is the limitation on the nature of financial reporting? So the financial reporting, our financial reporting actually gives the management a relaxation that if they want to deviate from the applicable FRF, they can do so. Right? But for that they will have to give a justification. They will have to disclose it into their notes that yes, we have deviated from this requirement of this SA or this FRF, right? And this is the reason. Maybe because of the fair presentation they want, maybe because of any other reason. Whatever it is, they will have to disclose it. So they are allowed to do so. For example, now you know that Ind AS has been applicable on those companies which have a net worth of over 500 crores already, right? So you know, the Indian accounting standards, the Ind AS that have come up now, they actually focus on reducing that rule-based accounting that we have been following so far. The focus of Ind AS is to give a discretion-based accounting, that management should prepare accounting as per their discretion, as per their need, what they think is better for their company, and then give a disclosure accordingly. So the concept of that rule-based accounting is fading away slowly and silently. Right? So that will again be an inherent limitation, because that is the nature of the financial reporting where we don't have a control. Getting the point? The next is the nature of the audit procedures. So basically the first example that you get out of it is the test checking. When you're checking it on test basis, there is a risk that you skip the fraudulent or erroneous entry in the statement, right, in your database. So there can be a situation where management do not provide you with the complete data, and that can be intentional, that can be unintentional. That could be a cause of error, that could be a reason of fraud, right? Our procedures that we use to gather the audit evidences, that may not be very much suitable to detect fraud, because when we are not bloodhounds, understand, we are watchdogs. That is the statement that is used for us, right? And that actually saves us a lot of time. But you need to understand that our procedures that we follow, we keep in mind that we are here to check whether the financial reporting, whether the financial statement has been prepared as per the applicable FRS. So what do we check over there? The requirements of the standards, the requirement of the schedule, the requirement of the law, right? So we are not an investigation team. Nobody has told us, no, this company is into a fraud, go and investigate. We are not Kroll, we are not Raw. What we are doing is just giving our assurance that okay, they are following an applicable FRS, and the concept, the pattern on which they have prepared the financial statement is good. This is how it is required to be prepared, and they have prepared it. Well and good, nothing else. Yeah, they have deviated over here, this is something going wrong, we have qualified it also, it's okay. Right? So it is not an investigation where we go behind them like a police, like an investigator, and investigate every single thing. No. That is the limitation. Right? We just want the reasonable assurance. There are certain procedures we follow, we check, and we are over with it. Okay, it seems good, let's move ahead. Right? The third point, the timeliness of financial reporting and the balance between benefit and cost. The auditors are not given a lot of time to conduct the audit. So for example, or not an example, this is a fact, the client is preparing the data throughout the year. They are entering into the transactions, debtors, creditors, banks, right, other customers, clients, suppliers, a lot of things are going on. Manufacturing, service providing, procurement, sale, stock sheets, a lot of things are going on, and it is going on throughout the year. And now at the year end, the auditor comes and he gets the report. Now, do you think it is possible for the auditor to trace back everything and check all the entries that have been put down throughout the year? No, because we don't have that time. We are not going to spend another year behind that audit. It's just a couple of months, couple of weeks that will spend behind that audit. So that is a limitation. We cannot go behind it. That is the timeliness of the financial reporting, right? And the balance between benefit and cost. That is, we are not getting paid to that extent that we go in. If you pay me to, if take an example, I am a runner, right? You ask me to run 100 meters and you pay me accordingly, I'll run 100 meters. If you pay me an amount which is equivalent, or if you are traveling in a cab and you pay them ₹100, they'll take you to 5 kilometers only. They won't take you to 20 kilometers for 100 rupees. If you want to go to 20 kilometers, you will have to pay 400 rupees. So that is the actually meaning what I want to convey. The balance between benefit and cost. So the cost involved in audit, they always want to be constrained with audit. Okay, this will be the audit fees, not more than this. So within that fees, how much is the resource that the partner can apply? No, maybe a manager, an article, a senior, that is it. Right? So that is an inherent limitation with audit, right? So going back, what are the four application and explanatory material? Scope of audit, preparation of the financial statement, and risk of material misstatement and inherent limitation of audit. That is it. Your SA comes to an end. Congratulations. The first essay we have covered it, right? 2 objectives, 5 requirements, 4 applications. That is it. The keywords you know, the topics you know, understanding is clear. If there is anything specific you don't understand, put it down in the comment box. I'll get back to you. If you want me to explain any topic in detail in a separate video, I'll post that video for you. Feel free to comment. Feel free to come out with your queries if you have. Let us make this class an interactive class. Right? So stay tuned for the next standard on auditing. Until then, this is Abhinay Gupta signing off. Thank you. Bye-bye.